Hello and welcome to episode 203. I almost said 302 of The Crate and Crowbar. It is the 24th of August, 2017. My name is Chris Thurston, and tonight I'm joined by Tom Francis.
Hello.
And recurring guest John Roberts.
Hello.
It's another Suspicious Development special. Speaking of suspicious developments, you have some heat sig business this week? Pod voice question mark?
Sort of. I've been working pretty hard to get the next beta ready, and that is now out of my hands. It's going out very slowly to small groups of people, so don't get too excited if you're waiting for it. But it is, it's, happening. It's like, it's not done or nearly done. It's just, now it's kind of out of my hands for a little bit. Like, most of the work is going to be bug fixing, which programmer John will take the lead on. And I get to not relax in any way and not take a break in any way, but just work on a different kind of thing, which is going to be like doing trailers and prepping for launch and things.
I'm relaxing. It's great. It's because, well, they might have said it, but you haven't told me. But no one's specifically said the art in this game is bad as their beta feedback. So
Beta feedback.
Beta feedback.
I can barely read the beta feedback because I'm too emotional about it. I think during this beta I might just sort of have to pay either you or other John to read it for me and summarize it in a friendly way so that I don't have to read any hostile criticism.
John, as the first John, I think, do you get to just be John, or are you Art John, or First John?
I think I'm just Art John.
That's
It's very contextual. I don't know. You haven't mixed me up with Music John.
No.
Yeah. Which was more of a problem on Gunpoint when we had John Robert Matz involved.
His name goes a long way before you know whether or not it's going to be him or you.
You really needed to get Matt Johns onto that. And Robert Matt, I guess. That would have finished the pointlessly confusing cycle. Also news this week, it has to be quite a newsy week, it's because it's Gamescom, which none of us are at, obviously. And have you guys been following it particularly closely? Because I haven't.
Not really. It seemed to be mostly console stuff that came out of the presentations. Lots of talking about exclusives for the Xbox S or X or whatever the hell the next one is that's going to be good and not bad.
Yeah, I saw the phrase Xbox One X Scorpio Edition, which, bless them. It's like a ball of brand words falling down a hill, that naming convention at the moment.
It's almost as bad as graphics cards naming.
Oh, it's that bad, surely. Actually, no, the graphics card naming is kind of course corrected a little bit, hasn't it? Like, you just think of things as numbers now, right?
Yes, but there's letters in there as well, and they're suspicious.
It helps that AMD sort of dropped out of it a bit. Like, they're not as competitive as they used to be, and so now you only really have to remember NVIDIA's series. Because the worst was when, one of them was using lower numbers than the other one, and the generations kept going on and on and on until one of them caught up with where the other one used to be. So, I don't know, NVIDIA's 780 or something was... there used to be a Radeon card called that. I can't actually remember what numbers it was, but yeah, they merged at some point.
I guess people don't really think about the names that they get given by retailers now, because you just buy the cheapest, most accessible version of the number you want, rather than, do you get this company's, Pharaoh 2 Extreme Obsidian Edition or whatever.
With little red glowing lights on it.
Yeah, and a picture of a CGI woman made of liquid steel.
Why are they always so primitive? The CGI women on these card boxes, because it always is a CGI woman. They always look like they're sort of 90s era magazine covers or something.
They look like how virtual reality looks in TV from the 90s and noughties. I think maybe it's a separate set of digital art disciplines as the bad half. They didn't know what they were doing. Don't know. Maybe it's just not companies that put a lot of they don't have an art department to sort that stuff. So
are they marketing them now as VR ready or whatever?
Yeah,
because HD was everyone was just saying, this card is HD ready, but it's a fast to really say your graphics card is VR ready because It only is if everything else is, right?
Yeah. But I've seen PCs build as VR already, which makes sense. Yeah. Speaking of things that won't be either VR or probably require an amazing graphics card, one of the big announcements of this week, although there's not many details yet, is that Relic are making Age of Empires 4.
Oh, it's Relic, is it?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
I missed that
Yeah,
part.
that makes that exciting news.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think everyone was expecting them to announce Age of Empires 4 because at the PC Gamer show at E3 this year, they had a Microsoft man who's there to do what he can, and what he could do was announce the remake of Assassin's Age of Empires 2, which is the sort of HD edition, a little bit like what they've just done with StarCraft Brood War, what Blizzard have just done. So a sort of, all new sprites and stuff, but the same game. And then he hinted that we'll have something else to announce, which obviously is this. But the surprise is that Relic are making it, which is really interesting because they've not made a RTS like Age of Empires. In fact, I would say that they kind of stood out over the years for making RTSs that aren't like the Age of Empires sort of Command and Conquer model.
Yeah, their big thing was getting away from drag select and attack move and making things fall from the sky.
And having forcing you to get out on the map. You've got to take points and hold them.
The kind of whole anti-turtling built into your main design.
So, I mean, the last person to take the helm of Age of Empires, wasn't it Chris Taylor?
Yeah.
With Age of Empires Online, which was kind of a weird thing where it went free to play and don't think it did terribly well.
No, I don't think it
I think
did.
it's shut down now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's struggled almost immediately. And so that was, where that was the Total Annihilation / Supreme Commander kind of expertise being poured into it. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
I can't remember though. Was it actually like Gas Powered Games doing it, or was it just Chris Taylor?
Yeah, I think it was Gas Powered Games that did it. I think. But yeah, so that license is now passed to one of the surviving strategy studios. Presumably
Chris
created.
Taylor is off doing his own thing now. He's doing something indie. Don't know what.
Cool. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they make of it. I don't. I remember saying this at the live pod we did at Rezzed, that I think someone asked from the audience, what game series is your blind spot, that you haven't played, despite the fact you probably like it. And for me, that's Age of Empires. So I'm the qualified person to talk about this, really.
I don't think I ever played it. I played Rise of Nations, and I get them confused sometimes.
Yeah.
And think I've played Age of Empires, but actually I played Rise of Nations.
It was the one RTS I was actually good at.
Huh.
I don't know why it was that one as opposed to Command & Conquer or StarCraft, but it was the one that I got hooked into and could actually compete in multiplayer, which has never happened before or since.
Because it does seem to have a much broader reach than other RTSs. I know a lot of people who that's the only RTS they've ever liked, and they like that one a lot.
Why was that? What was it about it that made it click?
I think it was fairly simple mechanics, or maybe it was just the first set of mechanics I properly understood, with its 3 resources and it's how you do workers and build troops and stuff. And the strategy itself was pretty simple. It's you wanted your blob of units, but if they had blobs of units of a certain type, then you got the one that was good against them, and that was kind of manageable.
An army of rocks.
And then I think it's massively dorky to say it, but I think all the history they built into it played a big part as well. Because I think for a huge amount of people, that was the first experience they had with interesting real history. Because it essentially had an encyclopedia built into the game. So while you were looking at your Centurion units, which were exceptionally powerful infantry, you could also just go and find out, what were they actually and why they called this. And
Was it set in just one time period, or did it progress through the ages like Civ and Rise of Nations?
It's fast Civ, right? You start off with cave people.
They were quite constrained. So the first one went to kind of late, just post-Roman Empire, I think. And then the second one had a little bit of overlap, but then went into medieval era. And I can't remember the third one, didn't play a lot. I think it probably tried to do everything. So it is going to be interesting to see where they take number 4, if they constrain themselves to a single era, or they try and do everything. Or
The trailer, which is just slow pan over art plus voiceover, goes from, I think, ancient to like so the first image I think is like Julius Caesar on the steps of Rome, and the last image is like Spanish conquistadors in South America. Showing like both native South Americans and native North Americans charging into battle. So presumably it goes from like ancient Europe to New World kind of thing.
Yeah.
That
I
would
think
be my guess.
Dawn of the Gunpowder Age is a good place to kind of finish, because that's when strategy just starts changing rapidly.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like
Plus, you don't have to make flying units then.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so interesting, and I'm really curious to see what Relic do with it, because they're good at making RTSs, and as ever, there's only ever at any given time a couple of studios in the world actively working on that genre at scale. So, yeah.
A small miscellaneous bit of news is that XCOM 2 is free this weekend. Worth knowing.
Which is in advance of the expansion coming out next week.
Yeah, like Tuesday, I want to say.
I guess so. Yeah, I think so. The expansion comes out, I think, on the same day as Absolver, which I'm really, really looking forward to, which is the multiplayer online martial arts game.
Are you hopeful you'll finally be absolved for your sins?
Well, I mean, I've been Dishonored twice now.
Absolved or your money back.
Yeah, and then it's a crazy month really, because that stuff's all happening at the same time. Then Destiny on consoles is the week after that, and then I think Dishonored 2: Death of the Outsider is the week after that. Yeah. So
they must have tried so hard to get the Dishonored and the XCOM add-on sequel kind of thing to come out on the same day, like they did the first time round.
Really?
Yeah. That was a very hard day for massive dorks.
Yeah. Well, it's a hard day for people who work from home at a sort of self-set pace, really. Like that's the issue with this. It's fine. If you can be trusted not to do these things, but no, I think we're going to lose the first half of September. Other announcements from Gamescom was, and all I've written down, thanks to the thoroughness of, I think, Tom's notes, is the phrase Jurassic Thingy.
Yeah, I don't actually remember what it's called, but there's a Jurassic thingy, right?
I think it was Evolved or Unleashed or
Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Parked.
Park.
Park it up.
Park it up.
Park it up with the Jurassics.
From amusement theme park specialists Frontier and all the excellent people there.
Your old company.
Yes. Lovely people with expertise in that kind of area. And so it seems like a genuinely great fit, and I can't believe it's never been done before.
Yeah, it's nuts.
The reaction to it's been really, really positive on Twitter. Everyone's just like, oh my god, I need exactly this.
Is it... So, like, the little bit of footage they released, or like the little trailer announcement thing, has like the T-Rex stomping out of its paddock and eating somebody. Surely that's like what everyone wants to see, but it's also completely the fail state for the game. Like, I mean, it's not going to be Dinosaur Theme Park Crisis Manager, right? Presumably, unless, you fuck up.
I assume it'll be something similar to SimCity's like natural disasters and stuff like that.
I can imagine like if they did like a campaign, a series of disaster scenarios that you've got to fix. But I think I could get quite into a game of this where nothing goes wrong. Like, it could be quite satisfying to have no dinosaurs go rampant and nothing exciting happens in my park. All you get to do is see actual dinosaurs.
Little pop-up window says like, our scientists have discovered that they can combine ability to talk to velociraptors with invisibility and being huge and no empathy. Would you
Research?
Shall we do this? Sure. That's a bad film. One of the only times I've ever been actually unable to stop laughing in the cinema, Jurassic World. And I usually am a pretty, quiet, focused cinema goer, because I, hate it when other people uproariously. But the entire crowd was having such a great time at the expense of, I think, what they wanted the tone of that film to be. But no, it is a good fit. And I was thinking, because, I mean, part of the fun of Roller Coaster Tycoon or Civ or not Civ, SimCity is breaking things. So the flip side too, wouldn't it be nice to actually get it right and nothing goes wrong, is it might be fun to treat this like, like one of those physics games where you set something up and just like watch it go completely to pieces.
Yeah, I don't know what the dinosaur equivalent of firing two roller coasters into each other is.
I wouldn't be surprised if the design of it sort of pushes you to take more risks. Like people get bored and they want to see the dinosaurs closer up, and like all the safest precautions that get you the least happiness of your attendees, and so you're always like encouraged to put it right on the knife edge of, is there a horrible, predictable dinosaur disaster?
Maybe one death isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, one is spicy, two's a lawsuit. I guess that's the interesting thing. I don't have no idea how. Is it Warner Brothers has Jurassic Park? I don't know, but how flexible the license is, because people, because it's a licensed game. That's where I guess my concern comes in, that it might not be kind of keen on, becoming like a dinosaur murder park simulator, because if it were a fan, because probably nothing stopping someone from making this as a kind of Jurassic Park fan game under a different name, then you can make it more of a black comedy where you are pushed to take more risks, and more power to them if they have that freedom within such a big license. But
that'd be very faithful to the films. The film's all about the parks taking absurd risks, being completely reckless and stupid.
But you see what I mean about, like, traditionally those kind of big entertainment licenses tend not to become like dark comedies about how lethal and horrible.
We don't want to damage the dinosaur brand.
Yeah, which is exactly the sort of thing. I mean, to defend Jurassic World briefly, not that this is a film podcast, but somehow they managed to make a film about the impossibility of making a sequel to Jurassic Park because of corporate meddling.
Yeah.
So it's a meta victory, if literally in no other possible way.
It is in the tier of films that is on Netflix, and I haven't watched it and probably won't.
You really should. You really should watch. I'm going to say this everywhere. So I've seen it twice, even though it's terrible, because I was with my sister over Christmas, and just you have to see, if you like. I can't think of a better recent film to laugh at with friends, because
I heard Chris Pratt was a jerk in it though.
Yes, he's a total jerk.
But
his unfathomable animal magnetism is the only thing velociraptors truly respect. And that's not a joke. That's true. That's a plot point. They do respect him as Chris Pratt, as you would. He's not. He's Andy from Parks and Rec, but but yeah. So Jurassic Thingy. Who knows what it's actually called? We certainly don't.
There was a new Overwatch short.
Yeah,
the May one.
You have opinions about these things, Chris.
Yeah, I do. They're so bad. Actually, so I do. Did anyone like it?
Yeah, I quite like this one. I found it quite cute. It was very cartoony and very basic, but it had I was like a little bit emotional when the robot did the robot thing.
Did you not? Was that not telegraphed a million miles away from like a million other different better bits of animated fiction about robots that do stuff?
Oh, it's certainly been done before. Yeah, I think I foresaw it, shortly before it happened, but not too long before it happened.
I feel like it justifies its existence for the 10 seconds where she has cryogenic bedhead.
Yeah, that's
which is great.
Like, so I will say this. I have, given that I like a lot of rubbish, I feel like I'm not in a position to ever judge anything. But I really don't like what Blizzard are doing with Overwatch. And I feel like, and that's not a useful opinion really, because obviously loads of people love it and it's got a huge fandom. And actually, well, I think one thing that Blizzard are doing well is they're responding to that fandom and they're actively presenting those characters as the fandom thinks of them, rather than initially where it's like, Soldier 76 is a very serious character, and the entire fandom's like, no, he's the dad. And then to which the response is, okay.
Well, he's the dad now. Here's his barbecue outfit.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something really off about it, I think. And that's what I would say is that the sort of the art direction and animation side of it, the sort of and the music and stuff, that's all good. Fine. Plenty of, important not to lose track of the disciplines that are working at full, steam. And that includes the people who had to figure out what May's hair looks like after she's just been cryogenically unfrozen, and they did a good job. The thing that I think keeps striking me about all of these now is how bad the writing is, to the point of the thing I said today on Twitter, which was that I think, because I kind of agree that like there are sort of charming little moments in it. I think it's it's derivative, which would be my other problem with it, but the entire thing would work as one of those 10-minute Pixar shorts that runs before a big film that has no words in it. The entire it doesn't need any words. The quality of the animation is good enough and the story is unsophisticated enough that every single plot beat in every one of the shorts that they've done never requires a character to say anything, because they don't really have character. They say exposition constantly. Like I don't think Overwatch has had a single ounce of character writing yet. They've just said motivation and exposition at each other. And I find that sort of interesting, because I do think Blizzard know what they're doing. I think it's over the top to presume too much intent. And something that, struck me when I was overseas last month was that the games industry is the big game, these sort of big multiplayer games that operate internationally. Companies are starting to think more about how to produce stuff that crosses international language, culture boundaries quickly and easily. That, the obvious thing to compare a lot of these things to is the TF2 shorts, which are brilliant bits of clever writing more than anything else. The animation's good and stuff. And the well voice acted, but predominantly those things are memorable because the scripts are really clever. And I mean, particularly by the standards of game marketing stuff. And I think that there was another Overwatch video last week, the Junkrat one, which is appalling. It's just anti-comedy. I
was going to bring that up to point out that I thought it had 2 or 3 bits of genuinely good comic timing and physical acting. Like, the whole thing kind of flops at the end, and there are terrible moments in it, but there's a couple of genuinely good jokes in there, I thought.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, maybe I just hate this thing for no reason. But I mean, I think, well, compared to any of the TF2 shorts, which are very similar.
Oh, yeah. It's not a comparison.
Yeah. But the thing about the TF2 shorts is a lot of them are quite dependent on puns or like sort of, I can't imagine them being, for example, translated very easily. Like, I mean, obviously, a lot of translators do a good job, but it's very, when something is like a nested pun in English, that's not necessarily going to translate fluidly or whatever. And so the Blizzard approach of like, literally there will be no depth to anything we write. It will just be exactly surface level. I need to do this. I need to do that. That's this. This person shouldn't be dead. Oh no. Moment of sadness. Moving on. I think it's much more accessible, and that's fine for what it needs to be, but it just feels so empty. Like, it has no life to it at all for me.
My hang up for these things is that I always want them to reflect what the character does in game. And so I think, like, in retrospect, one of my favorite TF2 shorts was the sniper one, because it's very funny just generally. And mostly it's about like the sniper's relationship with his parents, which is hilarious. But the one gamey bit is like, he's sniping at somebody, or he's taking aim at somebody, and he's trying to figure out whether the person has seen him. And when bullets start hitting his tower, he's like, yep, he's seen me. And that just mirrors exactly my experience of being a sniper. And I love that stuff. And so I was annoyed in the May one that she builds this gun to basically fire icicles at a thing to climb on the icicles, which she can't do in game, right? She can make a wall and stand on that, and that can get her up. But like, the gun in the short just does something totally different to what it does in the game. And the thing it does would be really useful in game, but it doesn't do that.
Yeah. And I think there's also the side of it is like, there is again all the TF2 shorts are kind of macabre black comedies to some extent, because they're about this sort of group of people that just murder each other for no reason forever, really. And
I'm a psychopath, I'm an assassin. Well, the difference is one.
And the Overwatch shorts are ostensibly trying to tell the story of a bigger universe or whatever. But like, May is Overwatch's like grinning psychopath. Like, she freezes people and then fires bolts of ice into their brains to kill them. Like, and I just, that was the thought I was left with. She sort of trudges off to the future at the end of the short, like ready to rejoin Overwatch and be the next person she's supposed to be. And it's like, she's just going to fucking kill loads of people with this ice gun she's just invented. Like, she's going to kill Winston sometimes.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, it blows my mind that, that they can take their fiction so seriously and not just as a gambit, but it, completely pays off. People are absolutely super invested in this and love these characters and get really invested in them. But their fiction just absolutely doesn't hold up for just 1 second of action. Like, the game just utterly defies it at every turn. What happens in the game is completely contrary to what the fiction is.
Yeah, even though they try and seed some of the fiction into the maps and stuff. But
but they're all just fighting on random sides, and it's just random who kills who. And there's obviously duplicates of people within matches, and everyone is being murdered constantly but resurrected for no reason.
In fancy dress,
no less. Yeah. I think that's the other thing. Like, is I continue to be taken aback by like how like there hasn't really been like an original story beat in it yet at all. Like, everything is a cliche from a like down to person wakes up as the only person who has survived a cryo-freezing process. Like, how many times have you seen that? Little robot has problem with its batteries and needs to plug itself in to sacrifice its own battery charge for the good of a different person, which is a plot point from WALL-E. Like, you know what I mean? Like, all of these things feel like, I feel this way with Blizzard generally, like, that they have such good production capabilities and they have so much artistic expertise, but they have never, to my knowledge, told like an original story. Like, not even close, right? Everything is a pastiche of something else, and it's sort of so. I think I find it irritating because it's so. It's almost so unacknowledged. It's just sort of like, we're doing this. This is our amazing story, and it's like, this is just a patchwork of like 5 different comic books and a couple of movies, and like.
Probably an argument for cliches being easy to handle. Like, these are big, obvious handholds for a fan base to identify and connect with.
Yeah.
And they're kind of shorthand for character types and stuff like that, which makes everything extremely understandable very quickly. There's probably some value in that, and I don't know how much that is. Yeah,
and to be honest, like, I mean, I appreciate that, like, a lot of people whose opinions I respect really love the Overwatch fandom, which I think anything can get a good fandom. I don't think that's necessarily testament to the strength of the source material, but on a certain point, like, when people get attached to something, communities can make anything better. And I think that has happened with Overwatch. Like, people have a sense of who those characters are that is a sort of combination of like memes and fan art and sort of imaginative investment of people from outside Blizzard, and that stuff has gained a life of its own. But those aren't the films they're making, right? Like, they're not making the film where Genji is a bouncy little asshole constantly demanding healing from everyone in his team. And if they did, that's, I think, because that's the difference, right? I think that if you switched the licenses over, I think that's the video the TF2 team would have made of Genji, right? Like, it wouldn't be like, meet the martial arts cliche guy. It would be meet the irritating ninja. There would be some twist on it. It would be not something you necessarily expected, like in all of the TF2 shorts, where they've all been reimagined in some interesting way, and particularly because those characters from TF2 don't have any personality really, or they didn't until Valve decided to just do stuff with them and give them these interesting ticks or, backstory beats or attitudes or something. Yeah. You said I had opinions about Overwatch, but apparently I do. Apparently I still do. Yeah. Oh god, I just realized that if people were sick of me having opinions about stuff, the next thing on the news list was, I just written the word Mass Effect.
Andromeda is not going to receive any further updates or single player content.
But Patrick Soderlund, who I think is now EA, not DICE. I think he was the DICE guy. Said that, I think at Gamescom, that he thought the reception that Andromeda received was a bit unfair, and that it probably wouldn't be the end of the series, which is interesting. Because, it's mixed messages, because as far as anyone can tell, BioWare Montreal, who made Andromeda, are basically gone. Like, they've been folded into EA Motive, who are making the single-player portion of Battlefront 2. There are no further updates planned for the single-player part of Andromeda. So by all accounts, the reception that game received has killed the series, at least in that sense. But apparently they're thinking about doing something more. But it's, interesting nonetheless. I wonder how it's doing as a multiplayer game. Because Mass Effect 3 was well supported after, quite long after the fact. But
quite a good multiplayer game.
But yeah, I just wonder if there are people playing it, because
Andromeda is a less good multiplayer game, I think. Just because the way they've rebalanced a lot of the weapons. So the reason that Mass Effect worked in multiplayer, whereas something like their Dragon Age Inquisition attempt didn't, was because the main method of interaction you had in Mass Effect was shooting a gun, and the gun play and cover shooting was great, kind of no matter what level you were. Whereas in Inquisition, the minute-to-minute, the second-to-second kind of damage output and choices you were making was heavily dependent on your level and the powers that you had slotted and the level of your enemies. So it did not feel in any way kind of kinetic or exciting. And I think number 4 suffers a little bit of that. They had to tone down the amount of weapon damage you do to kind of make up for the additional maneuverability and stuff like that. So it's not quite as satisfying to just play it as a shooter with some cool extra powers on top. Yeah. Which I think is why 3 was so good.
I think that rebalancing combat system worked brilliantly in single player, where you are the only person who matters. So
for sure,
you can be super powerful. But yeah, I agree with you that the multiplayer I played didn't stick in the way that Mass Effect 3 did, which is weird because it's the thing that's going to get updates.
It's the inexplicable thing of people will buy loot crates for just about anything. So.
Yeah, they will. I bought some Lawbreakers loot crates. Why did I do that? Why? I mean, it's a great game. It's a great game. I think maybe in some distant way I wanted to support it, but I was struck by how utterly unrewarding that is. I mean, I only spent like a $5, and, full disclosure, because I was reviewing the game, I got my code for free, so I hadn't spent any money on it, and I was like, well, I really like this and I want to support it, so I'll spend £5 on 5 or 6 or 7 boxes, and it's like decals and 1 or 2 gun skins and a rare skin for a character I don't play. And it's like, what a really low value thing I have bought.
That doesn't feel like true to Cliffy B's vision of like that early 2000s era kinetic fast multiplayer shooter.
What do you mean?
Well, that's what he was trying to, or that's what the marketing at least says. They're going back to
Lawbreakers definitely did.
Yeah, the hyperspeed twitchy shooter.
The game is amazing. The loot boxes are bad. Well, yeah. I mean, they're loot boxes. People know what they're getting into. It's got some interesting cosmetic ideas, like you can customize your boot print, but that only appears if you kick someone to death, and it only appears on their screen, but it fills their entire screen when they die.
Oh my god!
And so that is actually, it's a great idea because you never see it. You'll never see it, but you know that someone else has. And that's actually quite a nice feeling. I've got a couple of good ones that just say like GG on them or something. And that's, yeah.
I think I paid £1 once for some TF2 hats and stuff, and paint maybe. And, I played that game for like 250 hours or more. And, it wasn't free when I got it, but I imagine I must have had a press copy because I literally reviewed it. And so yeah, I didn't give that team any money, despite that being a huge part of my gaming life.
I'm not in any position to complain about cosmetics, and because Dota 2, unfortunately, where I've paid a reasonable rate for all of the 2,000 and 3,000 hours I've been playing the game.
Are Dota 2 cosmetics good? Are they
on the whole?
Yeah.
I think they're better than, I think they feel more meaningful within the game than like a lot of things do. Like first person games suffer from the fact that you don't ever really see your own character. So you got a cool Overwatch skin, but you're only going to see it if you get play of the game or something like that. Really.
It's very dependent on fashion as well. So if you like a set, but it's last season's fashion, you can buy like the whole thing for probably under 50p or something. So
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder if there'll ever be a type of game that manages to milk a crazy amount of money out of me. So just by coincidence, I happen to be resistant to all of the, because I just don't play multiplayer games much at all. And single player games that have a lot of DLC tend to be things like, I know Crusader Kings does, but I don't play that. I probably would like that if I did play it. But, Railway Simulator, you can buy all the trains and stuff. Like single player stuff with a lot of DLC tends not to be my bag. And then like Bethesda stuff ends up having quite a lot of DLC, but they're so big. The games are so big already. I don't need the DLC really. Like I buy some of them, but
I'm not going to try and like brainstorm like how to get money out of it. What about a Hitman game where they were constantly adding new gadgets? A bit like maybe, and each of them costs like £1.
Yeah, that's interesting, because the thing I used to say was if Blood Money released a new mission every month, I would buy every single one until the end of time. And then Hitman did go episodic, and it's great, and I like it a lot. It didn't completely... I found I just had phases with it. I would get into it for a while, and then I would go totally cold on it for like 3 months or 4 months, and then I'd get back into it. And it turns out that like, for some reason, just dipping into something every month actually doesn't suit me in that way. But yeah, new gadget. Trouble is, then it depends really on your sort of playstyle, whether they fit your playstyle. Like if you have an unsilenced assault rifle, I'm not going to buy it. And to be honest, like actually even, I don't know, you could probably sell me infinite varieties of silenced pistols forever because, like my favorite weapon in any of the Hitman games is the Silence 22 in Blood Money, which is just bad. It's inaccurate. It's doesn't do a lot of damage if you don't get a headshot. And it's probably like the worst silenced weapon there is, but the noise it makes is so perfect. It's just the silenced pistol noise.
Would that be the cosmetic thing you'd actually go for? It's like
maybe
different
just unlock
silenced
sounds.
pistol noises.
Yeah.
Like this one goes, wow.
Silenced pistols is too broad. It's just the sound of the silenced pistol. I want to keep the same pistol, but just keep changing the sound.
Yeah, or like pay for like time limited access to elusive targets, and if you win it, you get a new sound you get to keep for your elusive target. Oh, sorry, for your silenced pistol, which is maybe, yeah.
I generally sort of approve the elusive target system. It feels very strange now that I, missed a load in the end. And it feels strange to me now that there is all this Hitman content that exists that I just can't have ever. I would pay for that. I'm not sure how much, but there's a pack of all the elusive targets and you can play them now. Why don't they do that? They should definitely do that.
I think the, sinking down the kind of the cosmetic hole is easy to do when a game is something that's occupying a lot of your time. And I think that tends to be multiplied, which is why I don't think this would tend to happen, because it tends to be like, this is the way you are hanging out with your friends every evening. So whether that's an MMO or Dota or Battlegrounds or whatever it is. And therefore it feels natural to spend money in it for some reason. Like new sets and events and things when they come along are something you're sharing with other people. So, and, Valve have done lots of clever things with Dota to make it feel that way, that, participation in each new round of things to buy isn't just new stuff to buy. It's, the thing this time where based on how much each person in your team has spent on the compendium, your towers look fancier. And it does that at the beginning of every match by having the two teams face off. And it says like tower level versus, and it'll count up one team, then count up the other team. And you have to watch their tower. If they spent more money on the compendium than you have to watch their tower get fancier and fancier and fancier. It means nothing about the game at all.
Be gently stroked.
But it feels shit to be like the poor team.
Wow.
And they've done that, and that presumably works, so,
And that's where what was the total prize pool for the international in the end? Like
23 million.
Yeah. And that's the 25% of the money that they got. Like the other 75% went straight to Valve.
Yeah.
The other 75 million.
Jesus Christ.
I don't feel so bad about not giving them money for TF2 actually. If it was sort of prorated to individual team members, then I would, but it's not, so.
We should talk about what we've been playing rather than what we've been spending money on. John, what have you been playing?
I have been playing the Technomancer.
The Technomancer?
Yes. It's from last year, I think. But it's fine because nobody's ever heard of it. It's an action RPG. set on Mars in, I don't want to say post-apocalyptic because I use that too much, in a kind of rundown corporate future.
Bad future.
Where a kind of semi-colonized Mars where these domes or arcologies are run by individual corporations, and there's they're kind of competing for resources and stuff like that, and they've lost contact with Earth due to some previous catastrophe. And you play a Technomancer, which is kind of like a badly skinned Jedi.
Okay.
So it's like the warrior wizard thing, and they have an order, and it's very slightly religious, and they kind of interact with the government.
Is this one the game that's called like Technomancer the Third Eye or something like that?
No.
That's a different game.
I know what you're thinking of though.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about something else. Is it?
That might be like Cybermancy or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go on, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Is
Is it a, like, so is it, when you say action RPG, do you mean like in the Diablo sense, or do you mean in the Deus Ex sense, or the...
In the... I can't think of a better fit for it than the terrible long name game made by a football player.
Kingdoms of Amalur?
Yeah, it's that kind of concept.
Baseball player, but yes.
Yeah, baseball player, sorry, yeah, misleading. It's you and maybe like a party of like one or two extra allies facing off against small groups of enemies. And I think that's probably the best bit of it, is the combat system, which is nowhere near as good as Batman, but occasionally makes me think of Batman. Because you have a large variety. Well, you have like 3 different fighting styles, which are better for like groups or single focus, or like a defensive style. And you have your spells, your technomancy on top of that, and you're facing off against groups, like prioritizing members within those groups. Like you might have the ranged guy who's very dangerous but has weak defense, so you might want to pick him off first, stuff like that. It's very much like, if you remember the Gothic and Risen games, it's that kind of tier. I think
I know exactly what you mean.
You can charitably call it AA, I think.
Right.
But maybe down to like B+.
Or just an A.
An A, yeah. Except this has its sights set more on a Mass Effect type game. It doesn't have quite the range of travel or anything like that in it, but it's that kind of level of encounters. And
Is combat real time?
yeah. And yeah, it's quite... There's space in it for you to show finesse, which is nice in a system. But generally it's a game that doesn't really exceed the sum of its parts. But it's still fairly enjoyable. I think my main problem with it is that it's a brown vision of the future. And there's such an appealing lure when you're making... like your Mars game, say, well, everyone's a miner on Mars, so everything's going to be brown and grey, and everyone's going to be in dusty overalls, and that you have to stay away from that. You have to resist the lure. You have to get some colour in there somewhere, and they just haven't bothered at all. So various like slightly woodenly acted dudes in dark armour and leathers and stuff go around beating the hell out of each other in rusty, rundown mining centres and stuff. But beyond like the 5 or 6 hours of boring brown stuff where you're stuck inside,
Always a good start to a sentence.
where you're stuck inside this first hub world, for various reasons you have to leave the safety of this world out into the ravages of untamed Mars, where there's all kinds of aliens, and I can't work out if they're actually aliens or they're like rubbish that humans brought with them that have gone and mutated, because there's definitely prawns running around.
We do throw away prawns.
That's true.
The evidence is there.
Yeah, I think it was made by a French company, and the writing isn't great, but I think that's because a lot of stuff has got lost in translation. There's just some weird stuff popping up every now and then, like in the first 10 minutes of the game, you see your Jedi mentor explains to you very carefully that any life on Mars is precious, especially human life, and you should not be killing it, which ties into this mechanical system where everyone you fight, you just knock down. At that point, you can loot them, but you can then murder them and suck stuff out of them. You can basically suck money out of their blood. And
Wow.
They call it serum, and I think everyone's basically ill on some level. They never really bother to explain it. But yeah, after your Jedi teaches you that life is sacred, within 10 seconds you see a corporate guard murder a civilian in the streets just for the hell of it. It's like, so it's just you 6 guys that believe all life is sacred on Mars. Then.
So is blood money? Or is
I think
serum? I know. I was trying to say it in a way that didn't sound like blood money.
Yeah. But there's, cause it's been translated that you get some weird stuff like, your Technomancer group, cause of the way that everyone in this, dome is named, their surname is, they're cased essentially. So all the traders are called goodsmen and all the thieves and Rungans are just named rogues. So like, hey,
Wow.
you're John Rogue. I
make it
christen
hard to
you,
get away
you
with.
are fucked at this point. But all the Technomancers are called, like their surname is Mancer.
Barry Mancer.
And they have chosen such bad names for your mentor and the Grand High
Manfred Mancer.
leader, which are respectively Sean and Ian.
Ian Mancer.
Ian Mancer, a man who has magical powers and commands Ians.
Why did they call the game Technomancer? They could have got an Ian Mancer.
It's weird.
Is your name Techno?
Zach, which is
Can you
almost
enter your name?
Zach. Yeah.
No. It's
that would be
so I
great.
can get some voice acting.
If you could enter your name, 100% of people would write Techno.
We should qualify this with like, no offense intended to Ian's or Sean's or Zach's.
Unless your surname is Mancer, in which case we are kind of
but
laughing
like
at that.
Ian Wizard is like a joke I would go to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, mana is called fluid. So
it's like fluid in serum.
Yeah, I guess like to cast spell you have to spend fluid, and your fluid recharge rate is something you might want to pay attention to.
Do you just need to like drink a lot of Lucozade?
Has blood being money, has that been done? That seems like a really good idea.
Yeah, maybe.
Is it a good idea, Tom? Do you mean in games or practically?
I mean, just as a metaphor. Just, if you want to do like some sci-fi that paints a bleak picture and
Is
also
it not a
reflects
bit
our
of a
society,
heavy-handed metaphor?
it's out there. Like, you won't miss it.
Yeah.
Good. I mean, that's a perfectly, you can go for the capitalist vampire thing. You can go lots of different directions with that. You just probably shouldn't. Yeah.
I think I've been quite down on it, including you have to get past 6 hours of boring, rusty pits before things get interesting. But I'm probably going to go back and finish it. It feels like it might expand in a good way and be fairly rewarding, at least until XCOM comes out.
And the combat's good?
Yeah. Yeah, like I think there's enough space in like a skill system and your techniques and stuff for you to like not so much build interestingly, but build rewardingly. So the powers you're picking feel like they're actually changing the combat. So my rogue or my guy is specialized in the rogue system, which means he's all about dodging at the perfect moment and interrupting with his pistol that he's got and getting behind people to deal extra damage in a kind of Dark Souls but nowhere near as good kind of way.
I do find pistols to be interrupting. Anytime anyone shoots me, I'm always like just totally losing my track of thought and have to start again with whatever task I'm working on.
That's literally how Bloodborne works.
Yeah.
Like, that's all guns do is momentarily.
Oh, come on, I was working on that.
Yeah. Just like lose your train of thought because someone shot a pistol at your face. So is the combat system that you would say is the basis of your good feeling towards it, or is it?
Yeah,
more?
I think. Yeah, if the combat was bad, then I'd had absolutely no patience for it whatsoever because I don't particularly like any of the characters, and I've stopped reading the majority of the quest dialogue. Maybe I won't go back to it.
You talked yourself out of it. I might be totally wrong. I feel like I saw screenshots of this, and I think I thought it was pretty. Is it pretty?
In places.
Other than being brown, I mean.
Like, there's some good environments where you look over, like, wastelands of Mars and, like, the sun setting and stuff like that. But, in general, the art direction itself is fairly uninspired. Like I said, it's the first thing you go to when you think mining corporation on Mars.
Like sort of Red Faction, Total Recall.
Yeah. Like the first Red Faction specifically,
right.
Which was bad. I think Red Faction Guerrilla got a bit better with its kind of cool sci-fi cars. And
yeah, that was great.
Yeah, maybe if it's in a sale, you should have a look at it, and you really want something to like sink your teeth into. Because I get the feeling it's going to be long. There's certainly a lot to do in there.
Feels like a little bit of a Tom Senior game.
It's the perfect. I can't remember what his number is. Is it 6 or 7? Yeah, it's definitely a 6 out of 10. Yeah.
I think he might have started to resent that being his thing. But too late. What have you been up to, Tom?
I played a bunch of things, 2 of which I've already played. So I'll talk briefly about those, and then one new thing. And perhaps after I talk about one of them, we could move to you and then come back to me.
That sounds like a structure of a podcast.
So I'm not talking too much. So I just wanted to quickly say that like last week I talked about No Man's Sky and I was pretty down on it, and I just started a creative mode run at that point, and I didn't have a lot to say about that. I didn't know how it was going to work out, and now I've carried on with that, and I think that is the way that No Man's Sky works for me, is creative mode. Everything is free. You can't be hurt. You like your ship will still run out of fuel, but then you just click on the fuel thing and it just recharges it. It's got weird hangovers from limited resources, but your resources aren't actually limited. And so it just becomes all about just going to cool places and looking at them. And I forgot how much fun it was to name these things, just to come up with names for the weird dorky creatures you find and the strange trees. And then, my rule is I go to a planet and then I spend enough time on it that I could name it. And if I can't think of a name, it means I haven't spent enough time on the planet. I need to drive around some more, and having vehicles is really cool as well. Like that's something that a lot of the new features they added, I think, were things that I was never really going to interact with when resources are limited. But in creative mode, if I can just any time just say, I want a fucking hover car right here, please, and I can have it for free, I'll do it. And that makes exploring way better. And then base building I'm really enjoying as well. Like that's a really nice system for it. I think it's nicer to use than like Fallout 4's, which was, Fallout 4's headline feature. And I'm not building bases to any purpose. I'm just, each planet, I go to it, I have spent enough time to name it. If I like it, I'll also build a base there, and you can put down a sensor to find out where the nearest base location is. You can only build them at certain spots. And then you go there and like, I'm not trying to do anything with the base. I'm not putting any functional elements in it. There are all kinds of things about farming modules and other things, but it's all a bit irrelevant to me. So I just try and make like a pretty layout with curved glass corridors and stuff, and try and make each one different to the last. I've just discovered that you can only have 3, so when I put my 4th one, it deleted my first one. But that's all right, because I was never really going to go back to them. And so it's kind of just like leaving my mark, and that sort of feels like closure somehow, in the absence of any kind of game. There is a game in No Man's Sky, and I played that and I didn't like it. And so now I'm playing the non-game version, and in the absence of any actual game, I'm just sort of leaving my mark on each planet and just, it feels like a sort of a decent response to the input of No Man's Sky. The input is these planets, and the planet generator has always been pretty good, and now it's better than it used to be. And some planets are a bit duff, and then some are just really cool. The latest one I found is just like, I've been to some really crazy, like bright pink and green ones that had crazy cliffs and weird features. And the latest one I'm on is just like desert, just like earth desert with earth cacti and earth shrubs and earth sand, and it just looks very traditional, but it just looks really good.
Is that what you named everything? This is an earth cactus.
Do you know what? I'm not sure I've named that one yet. I've left that one now, and I should name it, but the current one I'm on is like wild again. And yeah, I should go back and name the boring earth one. Boring but pretty earth one. And yeah, so that's working out for me now.
That's good to know.
I'm not going to like sink a huge number of hours into it, I think, but that's that is, of the ways available to me to play that game, that is the one that clicked for me. And also play Shadow Tactics again. And I think I've got access to, I think I've now played as all the characters. I think there are 4. I might be wrong about this. And the new one I've just unlocked is the Disguise one. And Shadow Tactics is really good at taking stealth mechanics that have been done a million times and just sort of doing them in a really definitive and clean and clear way. And so, the other ones have all been about distraction, and the samurai's kind of the combat guy. And there's a trap character, and the new one I've just unlocked is the Disguise character, who, her disguises are basically perfect. Only samurai can see through them, and samurai are very rare at this point, at least. But she actually needs to find a disguise, and it has to be a woman. And there aren't that many women in the levels. All the levels of Shadow Tactics are specifically designed for the characters they give you, so it's just like, you have the disguise person and the samurai. Here is the level. There's the disguises. Objective number 1, get your disguise person to one of the disguises. You've got a choice of which one you want to go for. And it's really nice to play a version of that. Like, Hitman struggled for like 4 games trying to get disguises right. They just went back and forth about how detectable they should be, when can they be seen through, how do we show that to the player, because it's too powerful if it's perfect, right? And in this, they are basically perfect except for against samurai. But getting to them is very difficult. Once you're in disguise, obviously like killing someone would break the disguise, and doing sort of really athletic things like grappling hooking or climbing or swimming breaks the disguise. And you can do that, but then to put the disguise back on, that's a sort of high profile action. You have to sort of stand up to do it. So if you're in a stealth bush, you have to stand up out of the stealth bush to change clothes, and people will see you. Like the vision cones in Shadow Tactics are 2-tiered, so the part where they can see you clearly is very short, but the part where they can see you at all is very long. If you're in low profile mode, they can't see you in the long vision cone. But if you're changing clothes, they see that. And so it becomes if you come out of disguise, it becomes very difficult to get back in disguise unless you've totally secured the area or you've got a really good safe spot. And this mission is basically like, Samurai is the least stealthy character, and then you've got the Disguise character who's basically the best stealthy character. Once you actually get, I guess it's a kimono. Once you get one, she can just go, not only can she walk anywhere and just be completely, immune to people's detection, but she can even distract them. And that's her thing. She can just walk up to anyone and talk to them, and she is infinitely interesting. She can talk for an unlimited amount of time, and every single person will be interested in what she's saying. Whoever she talks to will be interested in what she's saying. And that includes patrols, and patrols, if like more than one person moves together, they effectively count as one unit. So if she distracts one of them, she distracts both of them. And so that level has a really good flow to it, where you are initially trying to sneak around with her. She's quite an agile character, but has no attack stuff, other than just a default stealth takedown. So getting her to the disguise is a little bit tricky, and just mostly involves avoiding people. Then once she's got the disguise, she just has free reign of this huge compound and just go absolutely anywhere. She has really good power to manipulate guard patrols and distract people and all that stuff. But now you've got to get your least stealthy character through it all, because he's got to get to the samurai. He's the only one who can take out a samurai. Samurais can see through disguises, so she can't do anything about the samurai. And so the whole objective of the level is get the samurai to the samurai. He's a better samurai, so he can beat them. And yeah, that's just a really cool puzzle. And it really worked for me. I'm starting to realize it's very much a puzzle game. He's very designed. There are multiple approaches to each level, and there are ways to do it in clever and fancy ways, but they have designed these levels to work for these 2 characters that they've given you. I don't know if you ever get more than 2 characters at once. Perhaps you do, but yeah, they are kind of puzzles.
Is the user interface keeping up with what you want to execute?
It is, except for the shadow mode or whatever it's called. I think it's called shadow mode, yeah, where you plan things. It's strangely under-featured. It feels intentionally sort of not that good. You can plan one action with each character in it, but while you're planning, time is still flowing, so you have to have both the characters completely safe while you're planning. And you can't do things like run here and then do this. It has to be just run here or do this from where you currently are. You can sort of say like, you can, if you like throwing a smoke bomb or something, you can like say throw a smoke bomb at this guy, and in shadow mode you walk out there and into range and do it. But that gets stored as smoke bomb this guy, and it doesn't store the information about where they should move to do that. And so wherever they are, they will try and move to do it, but you don't have a lot of precision over it. And, the most common thing you would want to do is have both your characters run out, stab someone, and then you want to hide the bodies really quickly, right? And that is something your characters could do easily. Both of them, you can plan the stab, but you can't plan the body dragging. And because it doesn't pause time when you're planning, after you've stabbed them, you can't plan it then. You've got to do everything in real time. So you have to just use one character, drag the body all the way back to the bush, while the other character just stands there next to a dead body out in the open, and then switch to that character and drag them back, which feels like, to me, the point of having a planning system is that you can close that gap between what the player is capable of doing and what the people will be capable of doing. But that's like a glaring omission in there, and that it feels intentional. Like they could easily have it pause. The game it's not a technical limitation or anything. They've decided that they don't want you to be able to do that for some reason. And it's not like a huge problem because, like I say, the levels they're designed to work with the abilities you have, and so you're never in a situation where it's like, oh, the solution to this would be to do this, but I can't. It's a cool game.
It is a cool game.
What have you been playing, Chris?
So I've played a couple of hours in terms of new stuff. I've played a couple of hours of West of Loathing, which is, we've mentioned before, is by our friend Zach, who was on the pod last year.
Yep.
Yes. And his team, obviously, but probably him. And I actually never, I played probably a couple of hours of Kingdom of Loathing back in the day, but didn't dig into it, really.
He says 80% of the writing is Riff,
right.
who I have not met, but he's on their podcast, Video Games Hot Dog, with Zach and Kevin and Riff from Asymmetric, and Jim, who's the Frog Fractions guy. So, yeah.
But yeah, so, and I really like it, which is good, obviously, because it'd be really
Where
awkward.
do you get in the game?
So I'm now in the West, which is a threshold that you cross.
Yep.
And I've done like half a dozen to a dozen locations. You're constantly unlocking new places to clop away to on your horse. So it's an adventure game. It's somewhere between a point and click and a JRPG. It must be multiple games like this. It's got a sort of point and click, walk around, talk to people, do things system, a relatively simple level, mixed with JRPG style combat, all stick figures and stuff, similar to Kingdom of Loathing. But, the reason you should play it, and I think you should play it, is the density of gags is very high in a good way. It's one of the things where I don't think necessarily, one of the reasons I probably won't talk about it loads is because it's not worth, talking about why it's funny. It risks that kind of you had to be there style, explaining the joke after it's been made. But the way it's funny is the thing to explain, which is that good point and click adventure games of old, it finds ways of putting humor into everything, which is sort of continually surprising and entertaining and quite disarming. There's a lot of, this is from the school of game design where everything is made by hand. Obviously, everything is hand drawn badly. Everything has been badly hand drawn to the extent that means that there are, you can get a joke into everything, every kind of individual little, item and, enemy and ability and things can have something going on. Very early in the game, you wake up in your bedroom, as you always do in RPGs, and there's a bookshelf and you can keep, and, it appears they use random generation quite a bit for jokes sometimes, so you can keep looking at a gravestone and it'll keep telling you a different randomly generated person. Or in the very beginning of the game, it'll keep, I think, randomly generating books unless you just keep going, and eventually it will give you a book, which is called, Walking Badly. And the joke is, when you were a little kid, when you read it, you get the Walking Badly skill permanently. And when he says the massive for that skill is something like when you were a little kid you wanted to walk so badly, and now you have. And that means that whenever you move in the game, your walking animation is completely fucked. Like there's loads of them. They've made it. You can uncheck it in the options menu if you don't want to walk badly anymore. But it means that now whenever my character walks anywhere on the screen, sometimes he scoots around on his bum, sometimes he slides, sometimes he walks around on his hands, sometimes he drags himself along on his face, and it just does this, and it's just 100% part of the game now. Like it's just like I'm not switching it off because it's just everywhere I go, and it's just that basically like at scale, and there's there is a way of finding a difficulty level modifier that makes it hard, and the way it presents you're making the game harder for yourself if you do this is very funny, like everything else. I did find I was desperate for this to be a reference, but it's not. I did find that there's a thing you can get. I thought initially this was a reference. There's a thing you can get if you find some crates, and if you can find a crowbar, you can use the crowbar and the crates to get the thing. And I was like, oh boy, Zach was on the podcast. This must be a reference. And I realized, no, that's what crowbars are for. You fucking idiot.
Like, that's just how those two things work.
That's why the thing happens in the game that was to name this that. That's pretty close to where you can find the difficulty modifier. But I'm playing it at like coasting mode, basically, and it rewards. It doesn't really get hard necessarily, although I think I found a massive exploit, so I don't know if that was on purpose or not.
I have died in it.
Yeah, I've died. Actually, there are like, it's not just breezy JRPG thing, but mostly jokes. There are some interesting ideas. So one of them is, if you die, you just get reset to just outside the fight and you're fine. You can come back and you can try again. However, when you die, you become angry. And when you have the angry buff, several of your stats go up. But if you die again, or if you lose another fight, you become so angry you go to sleep. And you wake up in the inn, and that is functionally its fail state, 'cause you go back to the most recent inn, and then you have to go back out into the world again. It's just inconvenient, really. Like, death doesn't really ever set you back. However, in the inn, there is a mirror, and if you go to the mirror and insult yourself, you can become angry on purpose, which gives you that buff from the offset, but means that you now can't afford to fail without getting reset back, which is just a nice little idea, right? Like, it's a nice death mechanic, but it also is a nice kind of difficulty modifier. I tend not to use it after the first time experimenting with it, but...
Can you insult yourself in the mirror so much that you fall asleep and wake up back at the end?
No, you can do it if you want, because it'll tell you, like, if I do this again, I'm going to pass out from how angry I am at myself.
I've had that feeling.
There's loads, like, and there's a lot of... it rewards you more for thoroughness. So if someone, exploring everything, talking to everybody, if someone says something and it sounds like it relates to an actual environment that you've seen or whatever, going and checking out that thing, because it is always a thing and it will always unlock something else. Buying all of the tools you can get from the shop so that you can take advantage of certain interactions when they appear. It's got a nice system because it doesn't really have a quest system so much as people say things and those interactions are now possible somewhere. But you get the end of the intro gives you your horse and your companion, and as far as I can tell, those are permanent decisions that you'd have to play the game again to get the other horse or the other companions.
Which companion did you go for?
I went for the doctor, the alcoholic doctor, who's fucking. So this is the basis of how I think I've broken the game. But so I've got the alcoholic doctor and the dark horse. Because you can pick either the dark horse, the pale horse, or the crazy horse, or the normal horse. I went for the dark horse, who gives you some stealth bonuses and is extremely shy. And then
I went for I thought I had the stealth horse, but I think my horse is ghostly.
The pale horse. Yeah. I called it Biscuits.
I couldn't get the dark horse because I exchanged my pin for dynamite.
I did that.
And I think they might have patched it since I played it, because that just broke it for me. I just couldn't ever get the dark horse. I emailed them about it.
Okay. No, So yeah, one of the reasons that I think I might have broken it, but I don't mind because it's not the kind of game that you would care about having broken, is I found a place quite early on where I can just summon a fight against 3 skeletons. It's in an environment called the Dave Yard, where everyone who's died there is called Dave. Within the mausoleum in the Dave Yard, you can have a fight with you can basically pick a fight with one of them. It's even called in the game because I don't think anyone knows what this is actually called. Those like crypt things. Is it an ossuary where you have like the drawers full of skeletons in like an old timey crypt?
We've talked about ossuaries before.
We have. Pip would
I didn't know anything about it.
Pip would know.
You guys told me it was a place where you keep bones.
I'm going to say it's an ossuary. I'm probably wrong. But you can picture either like
or an ossuary. Everyone's there. It's called Oz.
Yeah. You can either fight one skeleton or you can fight three. And initially the fighting 3 skeletons fight was hard, but it gives you loads of XP for doing it and items that you can sell. And you can do that forever. And Alice, the doctor, the alcoholic doctor, is now leveled up so much that she has an ability. She hates the undead. That's her thing. And she has an ability called Bonesaw now, which just instantly kills a skeleton. It only works on skeletons. Only skeletons ever. She can't even attack people with the saw. But if there is a skeleton, she will kill it instantly from full health. So I can always win that fight easily. And I'm a snake oiler.
Me too.
So, which means that I have a briefcase full of snakes that I can either, well, at first you have had 2 abilities. One is, I'm also a gunslinger, but, you can whip someone with a snake, which poisons them. Or you can just deploy a snake. And I've invested all my XP in upgrading. It starts with a baby snake and I've got it up to poisonous teen snake. But the poisonous teen snake is massively over leveled, I think, for the sort of things I'm fighting now. So the first start of any given fight, and I've now got a thing that makes me faster. So I usually have initiative. So start of any given fight, deploy the teen snake. And then if it's skeletons, then Alice can kill one immediately and I can, do my thing. So combat has stopped being hard, really, because...
So my briefcase of snakes, I can withdraw a healing, some healing venom, or some healing stuff, or some venom to poison a weapon. And it has charges for that. Do you know when they replenish or
I don't
why?
Know. I've never even really touched that.
They seem quite plentiful. I've got if you have the healing thing you've extracted from your briefcase, then during a fight, it gets way easier. The time I died was I did like a bounty and went to find some kind of gang. And when I fought them, they got the first turn. And in that first turn, they killed my main character and then the fight was over. So I literally had no chance to do anything at all. And then I got angry and went back and it still felt like I was underleveled for it. But because I was both angry and I had a bunch of healing stuff from my briefcase, they would nearly kill me every single time they attacked, but then I would fully heal myself and then also whittle them down very, very slowly. Yeah. And we eventually won that way. But I still feel like I've done the wrong thing. I feel like I should have done something before this because I'm clearly underleveled for it.
Yeah, it's a weird one. If you fight a party that has a wizard in it or a beanslinger, as it's called, then, they will always seem to target player character rather than your allies. Because I tend to rely on off tanking with the teen snake. And
off tanking with the teen snake. I think we have a podcast title.
And if that can one-shot me, then that's when I lose fights. Because, again, I've got a super leveled up doctor, so she can tend to heal anything I can take in a turn. So as long as I can, and normally it's not like all wizards, so it's only one character attacking me directly and everyone else is attacking Teen Snake. So yeah, normally it's I can get through everything. I mean, only the first couple of hours of the game though, so maybe it'll change. There's it's one of those things where lots of the good sort of gags and sort of things come from things you feel like you discovered by accident. I can speak Goblin now, which changed one encounter completely because I can understand all their writing and, talk to them and trick them and stuff. And that is reliably funny as well. It's just, well written and funny video game, which is nice. Trying to think. I don't think, I wouldn't say much else about it because you can't don't spoil stuff or dig too deep into, mechanics and things. 'Cause it's not, beyond the fact that the mechanics are funny, you wouldn't play it because you wanted to play the greatest RPG combat system ever devised. Yeah. You play it because you want to see what happens when you, interact with things in a particular way or whatever. For some reason, I call my main character Christmas Dickett. I don't know why. I didn't randomly generate that. I just wrote that, off the top of my head. I was like, what's a stupid cowboy called? Like this. But right at the beginning, there's quite a lot of references to Crimbo. And I didn't think Americans said Crimbo. So that's my question. That's my only question arising from West of Loathing. Is, because I always think of Crimbo as a Liverpudlian thing.
That sounds very Australian to me.
Yeah, my mum and dad would call it Crimbo. And so I want to know why that is a thing. Anyone, including people who wrote this game, let me know. because that threw me. But no, thoroughly recommend it. And it's only a couple of quid, I think. So, yeah. And by all accounts, it seems to be doing quite well as well, which is nice to see. So it's nice when something is a success. So, yeah. What have you been playing that's new, Tom?
I have played, drumroll please, Flotilla 2. There's a Flotilla 2.
That was a drum roll. That was a sort of... like...
someone falling off a cliff. Brendan Jung has made a new Flotilla game, and it's VR.
Are you announcing a game on this podcast?
No, so I think he's announcing it today. Well, what's today? Is it
Thursday?
I think he was supposed to announce it yesterday. But anyway, I did check with him. Can I talk about this on a podcast that comes out on Friday? And he said yes. So Flotilla was a turn-based tactical spaceship combat game by Brendan Chung, who did 30 Folks Loving and Quadrilateral Cowboy. And Flotilla 2 is that, but in VR. And it's sort of room scale VR. I don't know what his plans are in terms of like whether he'll support seated VR as well, because he can, as long as you have like motion controls. Because the point of it is that you can just sort of reach out and pick up your ships and put them where you want with your hand. And that's, planning your turn. You're kind of, when you pick them up, they get attached to your controller, which is like a box in the game. And as you move that box around, the ship will follow it. And when you move it out of its movement range, it will kind of just stop at the limit of its movement range. And obviously some of your ships are faster than others, so you can see how far they're going to move that turn. And Flotilla is all about positioning. It has a hard and fast rule that ships take damage from the back and the underside, but nowhere else. So no matter how many missiles hit the front of your ship, they'll never do any damage. It's only if a ship can get beneath you or behind you. And you obviously want to be facing the enemy so you can shoot at them. And so it's all about trying to you're both trying to get underneath each other or behind each other. And you have like 4 or 5 units in this scenario I played. And so obviously you could do sort of like flanking things in theory. I have not done that. What I've done is lose horribly many times. It's you don't decide when your units fire, which is, I believe that's true of the original Flotilla as well. It's been ages since I played it. And so it's hard to kind of know exactly what's going to happen on your turn, even with your own units, even if the enemy doesn't do anything surprising. And it's just like a game where it's tricky to know how to go about doing what you must do. You must get behind these enemies, but how are you going to do that exactly? I guess just go as low as you can, but then aren't they trying to do that as well? Are we just both going to go down forever? None of us are going to knowingly turn our back on the enemy. But obviously you don't know what the enemy's going to do, and so on your turn you can see it play out differently. VR and like properly tracked motion controls, like, just having controllers that map perfectly to your hands, is the perfect interface for both positioning things in 3D space and also seeing things in 3D space, just being able to look around it and see where everything is and just get a full 3D picture of what's happening. Doing that on a flat screen is just way harder, and controlling it with non-3D controls is way harder. This is obviously the natural interface for it. But, I mean, I never really played Flotilla 1 that much. I played it a bit, and then I had basically the same problem I'm having now, which is I don't really know how to get underneath someone or behind someone. If they don't want me to. Like, in the one match I played, they just did. They just rolled over, and their bellies were exposed, and I got to shoot at some of them, but I didn't know why they did that, and I didn't know how to make that happen again. And so, but I don't think that means that the game is, the strategy of the game doesn't make sense. I think it's just that I haven't figured out how you play this game. There's obviously a knack to it. And it's a very simple rule, but it's, I think, pretty fundamentally different to almost any other game I've ever played. Like, you never get a thing where, like, this unit is invincible to all attacks from the front and the top. And that's all your units. All the units are invincible from 50% of the ways you can shoot them. So it's just hard to get your head around as to how to play it.
Do the environments have environments? Are there like asteroid fields and stuff for you to...
Yeah, there are asteroids, and then there are giant cubes. I'm not sure if those are placeholder or if they'll just be giant cubes. And when missiles hit those, they actually nudge them through space. So there's sort of an element to, pushing those where you want them or getting them out of your way and stuff. But again, you don't control when your units fire, so you couldn't really, as far as I know, you don't think you can target them specifically. You do have a bunch of special options for ships. So I have one of them that has like a ramming mode, and the way you control that is when you select the ship, the ramming option will just be floating in space somewhere, and you take your boxy controller thing and you just move it over there until that ramming box latches onto the front of your controller, and now you're in ramming mode, and now wherever you go, that's going to be, I guess, going to tell that ship to go at ramming speed and do damage by colliding. The box is very, it just looks like something straight out of Quadrilateral Cowboy. It just has that Brendan Chung look to technology where it's all just retro, but also meticulously detailed, and that's, an analog to your Vive controller. And then one of them you can tell when to fire, but you do it instead of moving. So it's like one turn you move it, and then the next turn you decide, okay, artillery barrage in this direction, please. And that's the only one I ever got a kill with, because I'm like, okay, I know where this one's going to fire. And then the other ones have, I couldn't tell you all of their abilities, but they usually have something like a sort of evasive mode where they can turn rapidly but can't move very far. And then another mode where they can move very far, but they can't turn very rapidly. Or you can do neither of those and just have the sort of balanced movement. And obviously the way you plan your move is just literally to move the ship where you want it to be and then push the trigger to sort of confirm. And that is going to be both a position and a facing. And I think they just sort of like lerp between their current position and facing to the one that you send them to. Or maybe they try and match that angle as fast as they can, and then also match that distance as fast as they can, in which case they would probably end up facing the right way before they get there, rather than like smoothly turning over the course of their journey. That's the kind of thing I don't know. I've only played like 2 matches of it, and the first one I got destroyed on turn 2. The next one I killed one of their ships, and then I got destroyed on turn 4. So it's still pretty brutal. But this was not like a final build of, well, certainly not a final build, not even a build that's sort of designed for the end user. Just a sort of tech test of how this all could work. So yeah, it will be cool. Man, VR is a pain in the ass. Just as an aside, no criticism of this game. Just I haven't used my Vive in about 6 months, and it's all set up. I didn't change anything. It's all more or less plugged in, except in the mains, because the lighthouses don't have an off switch. So if you plug them into the mains, they are constantly on, and they're constantly whirring, which makes a slight noise. So I had to leave them unplugged. And I forgot that wearing a headset and wearing a headset is incredibly hot. Having your window open.
Pretty hot.
Having your windows open when you're wearing a headset means having, your blinds open as well, so then everyone can see you blundering around your room like an idiot. And you need headphones for it, and the headphones I wanted to use, or the headphones I had handy, were sort of over-the-ear ones, which, sort of clash with the Vive's own strap, and it's hard to know whether to put those on. You've got to put those on afterwards, really, but then you're already in the Vive, and then you can't see what you're doing. The headset lost its connection at some point, and I had to unplug it and replug it in, which sounds simple, except that there are literally 8 plugs involved in that, because it goes to an intermediary unit between you and your PC, and there are 3 different types of plug for that, and then there's also other ones for like power and stuff. And I forgot that it can't deal with mirrors. I have a mirror in my room, so I had to remember, like, after it started to fail, I had to go out and realize, that's because the beams are reflecting off the mirror, and I need to go and get a sheet and hang it over my mirror, try and get that to hang out. And yeah, fucking hell. VR is going to be for once-through experiences, I think. Anything that wants me to play it habitually, it's just not going to happen, because I just can't go through that rigmarole every time.
Do you know what Brendan's plans for the game are?
No, I don't really. He's, if we didn't just announce it, he has announced it. Glitch City, the co-working space that he's a part of, are doing a sort of like fundraising thing, and I think they're all going to sort of deliver some news or show some kind of build. And so if he has already done that, or if he's going to do that, then I imagine there he has said what he's going to do with it.
Cool.
Should we do questions?
Sure. Let's do some questions.
Yeah,
some questions. Thanks, John. Your enthusiasm in this and in all things. Very much appreciated.
Someone called me a calming influence on the pod, and I don't know if I like that.
You're
I might go for an inciting influence next time.
inciting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You're a very calm dude.
I'm not sure if that's what a podcast needs, though.
I don't know. I mean,
Maybe fisticuffs.
It's, I don't know how well fisticuffs translate in an audio format. We could try, but I don't know. I think everyone else in this room would win, so I'm not super keen. Pip's not here though, because she'd just destroy everybody with her ice gun and Jeff B writes, just lobbing in a message here from the colonies in Halifax, Nova Scotia, that not only is peanut butter in a jam sandwich rather popular as a source of nutrients here, but my father, who grew up in England, has been fond of them since his time there. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. There's going to be more of this. I'm going to weigh in on two subjects of importance. Peanut butter and jam sandwiches and woodlice. Just in case you've momentarily forgotten what this podcast is about. So have we. Jeff's question is, I've been enjoying my time playing Overwatch's cool Healy mum, Anna. Despite her simple skills, I'm in awe of her seemingly limitless skill ceiling, with the kind of complex decisions you have to make with her every second. What games/characters have the most skill ceiling? Any good examples of a game having a skill floor? Love, Jeff B.
There is, like, at my level of TF2, the spy was the one where it made the biggest difference if someone was good or bad. If they're bad, they were just completely useless. And if they were good, they would, do the actual thing that they do, like stab people and potentially sap sentries and stuff. But also, even when they weren't doing that, they just seeded such paranoia in the enemy team that they would have to waste so much time checking that spy wasn't there, that, even while they're on respawn timer, they would be causing the enemy team havoc, which is great. It's probably not true at the professional level. I haven't checked in on, like, pro TF2 in years, but I wouldn't be surprised if, like, spy is just sort of not viable because everyone's too wise to any kind of deception.
I think thinking of TF2, the medic is the best example of skill flaw. That's what you play when you can't aim properly and still make a valuable contribution to your lineup.
Yeah, I think stressing that this does not imply the absence of a high skill ceiling. Lucio in Overwatch is designed to be a hero where there's loads you can do with him, like offensively and aggressively, and can be dramatically more effective than his base level of effectiveness, but his base level of effectiveness is just pretty good. Like, if he's just hanging around people, he's healing them all the time. You don't even have to point at them. And that's just automatically useful to your team. So you can't be 100% useless if you're just near your team.
I think Overwatch generally is full of examples of, like, I think it does have a skill ceiling, but I also think it has quite a high skill floor, because there are plenty of characters you can play. If if you don't want to play a healer, but you're no good at aiming, Reinhardt is right there for you. A man who literally never, like, you can aim your fire blast thing, but that's once every 5 seconds and it goes in a straight line and hits everything in a straight line. So, and also, Reinhardt creates a front line around him that other characters can read very easily. So where the fight is taking place is very obvious as well.
I can do an item which has the low skill floor, which was the grenade launcher or noob tube from Modern Warfare, and Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer, which was kind of reliably one kill, and then you would almost certainly die because the reload would be so long in between it. And you could perform much better if you were higher skilled, if you ditched that for some other attachment or weapon or something like that. But that's what you got if you were just desperately trying to achieve a 1-1 KD ratio.
Well, I think COD generally is a good example of a game with quite a high skill floor because it's so lethal. And I was talking to Cliff Blazinski about this last week and during an interview, and he described COD maps as porous, which is a description I really like. They're full of little holes and lots of windy routes, and they're sort of complex in a way that's quite difficult to master any given angle. Obviously, the very best players probably can, but for 99% of people who play them, you're going to get flanked constantly. Like, there are going to be people coming from behind you, slightly above you, from the left, right, hiding behind boxes, whatever. But the flip side to that means you're always doing that to someone else, basically. So everyone is always ambushing somebody else. So everyone's always getting the drip feed of kills and feedback because you get the drop on. There's no, again, to borrow words from Cliffy B. Blazinski, there's no dance to that game at all. You know, it's not like, a shooter I like Lawbreakers, which is why I was talking to him, or Quake or anything really, where the first shot is the beginning of the duel between two players. And maybe it's good to get the drop on them because that means that you can do a chunk of damage, but there is then a dance between two players. And if you get ambushed, you can turn it around. In COD, that's probably not going to happen. If someone gets the drop on you, you're probably dead. Yeah. And you just get the 3-second respawn, you're back, and hopefully you spawn behind the guy who just killed you. And that's, I think, that how it feels very lethal, and you wouldn't necessarily think of a game that feels very lethal as having a high skill floor because you're dying a lot, so it must be hard, but it's not. It's a lot more, random than that. And I think that's interesting.
Actually, it's kind of interesting to design a game around that, where, you get the kill cam that shows you how your killer killed you. If that just stayed on them after they kill you, and then now you get to spawn somewhere near them and you choose where. So you have a huge advantage against the person who killed you, but only them.
It's like you're being haunted, basically.
Yeah, so whoever's getting the most kills has a lot of people who can just, pounce on them at any time.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. A game, I can sort of mention it because it's coming out on PC soon. But I think Destiny has a very, very good balance between accessible stuff and high skill cap stuff within the context. Obviously, they're changing some things about PvP for the sequel. But I really trust them on this because I think, Halo was one of the last games of the modern era before the kind of revivalist wave of 90s style shooters, Tribes coming back briefly and Lawbreakers and stuff. Halo was one of the last game series that still carried that torch for a battle between two players is a dance. Destiny carried that torch from Halo. Cause they're both by Bungie. And that is also a game where, actually the fact that they give you ultimate abilities and things inspired by MOBAs and sort of these big one-shot powers that can, net you some kills in a moment where you desperately need them, that kind of thing. That acts as a skill floor raising mechanic because it means that even a player who struggles with kind of twitchy gunplay most of the time will occasionally just get access to a huge bomb or infinite flaming hammers or something that helps their team in the way that they'll get a little killing spree every so often. Maybe once a match, depends on the kind of mode you're playing, but that's a kind of positive thing. But the rest of it is quite a technical shooter with shitloads of room to not only play with greater finesse, but also play with greater understanding of underlying systems in the kinds of loot you seek and the kind of loadout you build for yourself and the kinds of things you develop. That's one of the reasons I love Destiny so much, is because it has both. And they're and then you get the kind of interesting interactions where a really, really good player can still shut down someone who's using their super, or their ultimate, which is a really cool thing then, because then you have the kind of, new player friendly catch up mechanic being actively counterable, but only if you are absolutely amazing. So there's, you know what I mean? Or you get lucky, but that's a nice, I think that means that you never have that feeling that raising the skill floor is taking something away from the top of the game, because it just creates an extra challenge for people who think they're good to get past. If you think you're good, but can you beat the person who suddenly got loads of bonus armor and that kills you in one hit for the next 10 seconds? And that's a really interesting thing. So hopefully some of that will translate into the sequel, which I'm very, very excited about. I don't know if anyone can tell. Yeah. Any other skill ceiling-y thoughts?
Dota?
I mean, God, you talk skill ceiling, Dota is all skill ceiling forever. It's infinite skill ceiling, and it basically doesn't have the floor is super low. There's definitely lots of interesting variants within heroes in Dota, in that you have heroes that have a much higher cap than others.
Would you say there's a standout hardest to play?
Invoker is probably the obvious one, who's the guy who has 10 spells rather than the traditional 4, but you have to create them by combining 3 elements, Magicka style, on the fly. That's obviously a huge skill cap thing. And then, it tends to be the sort of flashy heroes with spells that interact with each other in weird ways. Puck as well as pretty high skill cap heroes play well. But, the whole game is so hard that it doesn't feel like it necessarily counts. It's not like they added a super difficult hero to Overwatch where the floor is pretty high and therefore it really stood out. It's like there are even harder things within the hard game. You know what I mean? Like it's hard enough to play as it is. And also Dota's kind of flexible because if you end up building a character in a way where you're using lots of active items rather than passive items, then you've just given yourself like 6 extra abilities to manage anyway. So there's flexible skill ceiling / floor within character builds in the context of a single match. So, which is in itself a complicated concept. So even the way in which the game can become easier for people with certain item builds is itself hard to get your head around. So yeah. Next question comes from Travis, who writes, and this is a very good question intro. Whoop whoop, it's the Tom F is wrong klaxon again.
I disagree with your assessment of that intro.
I think it's great. What's that? The klaxon's happening again. When will it go off? Tom F, Travis writes, said that he doesn't like any music in RTSs, as he often finds it
I knew this was going to be about this.
As he often finds it thematically jarring, alongside mining some dirt or some such. However, I wonder if he also tars StarCraft 1's awesome soundtrack with the same Philistinic brush. I get nostalgia chills whenever I hear that cheesy guitar lick alongside the weetzel of an SCV mining some crystals. It just works. And I just want to pause a second. Travis, if you're the first person to describe the noise an SCV makes while mining minerals as weetzel, then that's actually might genuinely be genius. It's brilliant. What's your favourite chills-inducing musical piece from a game? Mine's the trumpety trills over the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion menu. Thanks, Travis, aka TJ Howes on Discord.
In answer to his first question, my issue is with bombastic orchestral soundtracks. So I haven't played StarCraft 1, well, at least not since it came out. So I don't remember what the soundtrack is like, but if it wasn't a bombastic orchestral one that was super dramatic, then...
StarCraft 2 has the same thing.
Okay, yeah, I'm familiar with the Terran music from StarCraft 2, and that's quite laid back. I quite like that. And then to the
So
second...
you're conceding to being wrong then?
No, I said the fucking... well, actually, I don't remember what I said because I was drunk, so maybe I did overstate my case. But my actual issue is with bombastic orchestral soundtracks that are overly dramatic during non-dramatic times.
Fair enough.
Being, Morrowind being my first Elder Scrolls game, that is the theme tune from that series that always gets me. It's really, the evolution of that theme tune throughout the series has been really cool because, Morrowind is very slow and kind of mournful or sort of, I don't know, like reflective. It was not in any way dramatic or exciting, but it's the same tune as Oblivion and Skyrim. And, each time it actually gets more dramatic. I don't know where they're going to go next because it'll just be like death metal for...
You end up at Pirates of the Caribbean if you make that soundtrack like a little bit faster and slightly more dramatic. It goes in a very Elfman place.
But I think my favourite bit of game music is the Mirror's Edge theme. And weirdly, I think my favorite
song or the
well,
soundtrack.
I think my favorite use of it is actually in the initial trailer, even though it is in the game and it's used to good effect in the game. Just the way it was used in that first trailer, it's just the instrumental version, is just so beautiful and just like gives the whole place this unique feeling and atmosphere.
I'm a big fan, as probably everyone knows, of, I don't know if you know what the refrain is called because it appears in multiple different pieces of music. In the Mass Effect soundtrack, there is a piece of music that is basically associated with Shepard and Spectres generally. Like it's probably Shepard's theme, I think, based on where it shows up. And I'm not going to sing it, but it's, I love the way that piece of that, a couple of bars is used over the course of the series in lots of different contexts. It's the only piece of, I think, the main Mass Effect score that appears in the stuff that Clint Mansell did for the third game. Cause it plays in a very slow and sad way as the Normandy's leaving Earth at the start of Mass Effect 3 and doesn't really play again in Mass Effect 3 until the ships leave the relay to attack Earth at the end of the game. And then you get, for the first time in the game, the full, bombastic kind of Shepard theme. And it's fucking great. I love that soundtrack. And it also is pretty, like, it's flexed in lots of different ways in Mass Effect 2, because obviously that game compromises Shepard in lots of different ways, but you don't really get the kind of full, like, we're fucking going, boys, way version of the soundtrack, which is what that's called, in Italian. Until the suicide mission, where again, it kicks in again, and that's probably my favorite. Not really going to get anything I care about more than that, unless it's a Star Wars game, and then that doesn't count because that's a movie soundtrack. John, any particularly standout musical moments?
Yeah, but it's Skyrim, so I feel like it's kind of
wow, that series really knocked it out of the park.
I really liked the barbarian choir concept that their composer had for Skyrim in particular, and I enjoyed the theme, like the Dragonborn from the soundtrack, and the Sovngarde one as well, which was kind of a slower but similarly kind of chanty one. I enjoyed them when I found them in the game, but I really, really liked them when they popped up on my iPod when I was stomping through fresh snow at 6 o'clock in the morning on the way to work, which made that trip particularly epic. But...
Actually, I think both the Skyrim soundtrack and which was done by Jeremy Soule, I think. He also did work for Dota. I don't think he did the original soundtrack for Dota, but he did the Jeremy Soule pack. And he's done some really rad stuff. I actually really like, that reminded me that I think the Dota score is really underrated. They play it on an orchestra during the International, and it's great. And for me, like, even though it's a bit weird that it's a sort of wizard sports, and it doesn't really have like the story stuff you normally associate with the score, it's, for me, it's sort of part of the character of the game. Kind of sounds a little bit like the Harry Potter theme in some ways, but slightly more epic, which is about right, because it's like wizard school, but...
passing thought the Battlefield has a very strong theme. Yeah, it was particularly good in the second one, I think.
There are a couple that just really work at their particular moments. There's a little bit of music after you come out of Ravenholm in Half-Life 2, where you've just been through hell, and then you're getting out to the Cordon of Resistance holdout. There's a little bit of a firefight, and afterwards there's just loads of injured people, and there's just a kind of really down vibe, and there's this really like sort of sad bit of music that's instrumental, but just kind of, I don't know, there's something kind of comforting about it as well. It's a really nicely judged moment. And I also really love the use of Will the Circle Be Unbroken at the start of BioShock Infinite. As you're going through that opening area, it's just so like haunting and kind of strange and magical.
I'll tell you what, speaking of BioShock, I think there should be a moratorium on like 30s and 40s music as soundtracks to Apocalypse in games, because BioShock falls into it a little bit. Fallout has done it for 2 games in a row. That's just banned now, sorry.
Did Fallout 1 or 2 do anything like that?
No.
They did for their intro sequences.
Right.
They only had one song, I think it was the Ink Spots for the first one. And then something else for the second one. But that's where Bethesda kind of picked that up and ran with it for the radio stations.
I've always found the Deus Ex theme kind of weirdly, I like it, but it doesn't quite fit the world. Do you know what I mean? Because it's quite an ambiguous place full of sort of shadows and secrets. But the soundtrack sounds a bit like the X-Men cartoon theme, like the dun,
it's quite enthusiastic.
Dun, 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 dun.
And the Airwolf
let's push my microphone. Yes.
And you can't, once you're thinking of one, you can't.
Yeah, I find that with X-Men and Deus Ex, Pirates of the Caribbean and Skyrim. What was the other one? Oh, Superman and Star Wars. Like trying to, those two things in your head. I mean, they're both John Williams, but yeah, and then I thought it was, I didn't realize that how weird the old soundtrack sounded to me until I finished Human Revolution for the first time, because it plays over the credits. Like immediately, I have to get the post credits thing where like, you know, Bob Page alludes to the Denton project, and then it basically just kicks in from the kind of the Human Revolution soundtrack, which is a lot more muted and kind of like what we would now think of as kind of like cyberpunky kind of techno kind of soundscapes, and then someone mentions the Dentons basically, and it just kicks into like ba 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 da da, and it's not quite that show tunesy, but
I think I did it on Glee once.
I'd watch Deus Ex the musical. That wasn't the question, but nonetheless. Any other music highlights before we move on? Nope. Gregor writes, Dear Crates and Crowbars, more of a comment than a question, and certainly not a grudge. I've been listening to your pod for years, and I've always wondered why Segway, as in the wheelie bike monocycle thing, has become the word for leading to your next topic. I thought it had something to do with how smooth they glide. Imagine my wonder when I first read Segway, as in the word Segway, in print. So thanks for expanding my vocabulary. Greetings from Switzerland, Gregor.
I love the idea that we might have been saying Segway as in the vehicle to describe the smooth way.
Well, presumably,
someone just drifts from one topic to the other on a Segway.
But presumably, that's why it's called a Segway, right?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Like when they named the vehicle, they must have been thinking of
a smooth transition from one place to another.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, or like a way of getting out of a conversation. Like, I'm just going to lean
Let me just
forward.
segue to my house where you're not here.
Yeah, exactly.
I have infinite patience for people who discover this because I thought hyperbole was a sweet, awesome future sport for Hyperbole for about 5 years.
Yeah.
I read at least the first Harry Potter book thinking that her name was Hermione.
So did I.
Probably a lot of people. There's probably a decent number of people.
I still people still say it's like Seg sometimes for Segway.
Yeah, I think Idle Thumbs do that on purpose, right? They
so.
call it like a sweet seg, and people write into them occasionally saying, actually it's pronounced Segway.
Yeah, I mean, you know, pedant baiting is a dangerous sport in this environment, but nonetheless.
Ori. Awry. I used to read that as Ori
Right.
until I heard it said out loud. I think, and for probably a lot of people who mispronounce a word in their head, there's a period where you have heard it in real life, but for a while you think they're two different words, and then you realize, no, oh shit, that's the same thing.
There's like melee is one that comes up a lot.
Oh yeah,
because like there's a lot of words that
like.
Legit, there's a lot of words that I learned from games magazines, like as a kid, right? And melee is almost certainly one of them because I don't think you encounter that word a lot but it comes up all the time in games, relative to any other context. And it was, I thought it was melee for like the longest time.
Yeah, me too.
And then, now it's obviously melee. But, you know, pronunciation doesn't matter that much. In fact, if you listen, if you're interested in people having completely different ideas how to say a word, but never really addressing that they say it completely differently, listen back like a couple of Miniatures pods ago. We play a Warhammer mini supplement called Burning of Prospero. And me and Tom pronounced Prospero completely differently. And I didn't realize this till I was editing the episode, and it's never brought up, but neither of us have ever agreed on how to say this thing. We split the box. Like, I don't know how, he says Prospero. And I say Prospero, and it's just, I don't know who's right, so I've never bothered to, like, bring it up.
I did a little, dev blog video, that was kind of like talking through my thoughts about inventory, that I didn't end up publishing because it was actually all a work in progress and I didn't know if I was going to do any of them. And I say the word inventory so many times that I just go through every possible pronunciation. Inventory, inventory.
Words. Sorry, I don't have any more.
Nowhere to go from there.
No, just more words. There's no smooth transition out of this.
I already had a word for that.
I'm gonna bicycle over to the next question, which comes from Sam, who writes, Dear Q8 and Cranberra, I hope this finds you well, and not at the end of an upsettingly long list of questions. What games have you played which contain the most genuinely human-seeming interactions between player and NPC? I'm particularly interested in games which successfully sell the idea of the player as therapeutic to an NPC, but any would be interesting. Kind regards, Slam. Sorry, Sam. Your name is Slam now. /Rakish. P.S. I ate peanut butter and jam sandwiches intermittently as a child, but was aware that they represented an American cultural and culinary perversion. Sorry, Chris.
I'd like to imagine him just having one peanut butter and jam sandwich that he ate intermittently, but every now and then he'd remember that it was an American perversion, so cast it aside.
Exactly. Meaningful human feeling interactions between players and NPCs.
I can't think of a therapeutic one, but one that really caught me off guard and made me smile was in Dr. Langeskov, the Tiger and the Terribly Cursed Emerald. It has one of those things where the game is telling you to do a thing, but you also have the option to not do the thing, and if you don't do the thing, you get new lines of dialogue about how you haven't done the thing yet. And you can intentionally defy the narrator / Simon Amstel again and again and again. And Simon Amstel's reading of all the sort of increasingly exasperated lines about this. He's very good at sort of doing that in a genuine way. And he's exasperated, but he also just starts laughing at how ridiculous it is that you haven't done this. And that was a very surprising and unusual feeling, was to feel like you made the NPC laugh. Like, no one laughs in games, really.
I guess maybe you could say that for the interaction with the Stanley Parable announcer as well, particularly when you're kind of falling into its deliberate traps. It's kind of what can feel like a very organic reaction to what you're doing, even if it's obviously, it's not personal, it's very impersonal, but it still feels organic in a way that feels like there's a real person there kind of making fun of you, which is special. Not really particularly the kind of power dynamic that Sam's talking about, but still, I do think that there are, individual conversations, plenty of them in RPGs, whether that's BioWare games or Infinity Engine games, that can have this quality because the conversations are well written enough. I appreciate that now I don't really have the sense that they never really feel particularly human to me, but that's because I'm so used to that method of storytelling that I'm seeing it as a game and as writing, as a conversation tree, and I'm kind of conscious of what I'm doing. But I feel like sometimes it's worth reminding myself that quite a lot of people kind of are encountering these things for the first time, or they're not quite so kind of, embedded in the sort of theory surrounding the design of these things. And so those, even though I think maybe we'd be reluctant to say like, oh, it's human because there's no dynamic element to it. It is just a tree that you are picking at, can still feel, genuine if it's sufficiently well written that you feel like your choices are having consequences and so on.
I really like, Deus Ex Human Revolution's, they call it like conversational combat internally.
Oh, like the sniffing pheromones stuff.
Well, without the pheromone mod, when you just have to argue the point and you get, it's really just for me, like a masterclass in how to do this dialogue stuff, because, it's a failable conversation. You can fuck it up. You can use the wrong tack and it will go badly. The responses you have, there's always 3, and they're broken down into broad categories, which usually is a bad thing. Like, I hate it when you just get a broad term and you don't know what you're going to say. But when you mouse over the broad term, it tells you exactly what you're going to say. So you know word for word what you're going to say. And that really felt like you win those when your argument is genuinely persuasive to the kind of person you're talking to and the specifics of the situation. Like, that was one of the only dialogue systems where I was not guessing what the designer had in mind and thinking, oh, which is the good option here? Which is the evil option here? Which is the funny option here? I was really thinking about the merits of the point and what this person believes and what would most appeal to them. And I would fail sometimes. Not necessarily the whole conversation, but just you would say something and it was obvious from their response that did not work with them. And that was a really interesting experience because you don't really see that in like movies and stuff. They do the conversation where person A persuades person B of their point, or they do the conversation where there was no way person A was ever going to be able to persuade person B. It's never that person A fucks it up. It's never that like, oh, they could have done that, but they just said the wrong thing. They didn't use the right approach. And so that, like, it still doesn't fulfill like there is one conversation in Human Revolution that you could say where you kind of do provide a therapy type service to somebody, but it's actually one of the worst ones in the game. It's one of the ones that rings really false because changing someone's mind on the spot in a conversation, just really hard sell. It's never that convincing. I think, but a lot of the other conversations are good because you don't change their mind, because you try it and it doesn't work for them.
There are definitely moments in Life is Strange that are very good for this, including probably the only example I can think of as a genuinely, I think that's probably the best place to go if you're looking for like therapeutic, conversations between the player and a vulnerable NPC. Pointedly, I think it's the end of episode 2 or the end of episode 3 has a brilliant example of that, which has a very similar thing to the, like a lot of the best conversations in Life is Strange are very similar to that Deus Ex system because they are failable conversations. And in some cases, if you've been thorough in your walking around and talking to people and getting clues and learning more information, you can get the magic piece of information that makes things a lot easier. But actually, at a lot of key moments, it doesn't give you that. Like, you just have to say what you feel is the right thing out of the options you've been given to the person, and they react relatively realistically. So I think that's probably a good choice for that particular kind of interaction. And also because it's a little bit, obviously you have time travel powers. It's a little bit more grounded than most stories like this, so you're not having arguments about like dystopian sci-fi things that might have gone wrong, or wizards or dragons and stuff. It tends to be kind of school stuff, and that I think as well lends itself to feeling a little bit more human. Next up, Damien writes, Dear Crate and Crowbar, no one in Australia eats peanut butter and jam sandwiches. That's good to know. Also, Tom's southerner woodlice are called slaters in Australia, but I'm going to petition the name to be changed to roly pigs. Damien.
Slaters is a good one.
I'm making a public service announcement here that woodlice and things called roly-polies or pillbugs are separate species. One of them, the roly-polies, can roll up on itself as a defense mechanism, and almost every other similar species of woodlice can't. So you should never ever try and fold a woodlice in half to help it, to like remind it how to roll into a ball.
I've been doing that all day today.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the ones I've seen did roll up, like they would curl up. I didn't witness them rolling as a method of locomotion. Is that a thing?
No, it's
That's Sonic the Hedgehog.
A purely defensive thing.
And which species was in the Phantom Menace? Do you not remember those droids?
The Droideka droids.
Oh, right.
Why do I know?
I knew Chris would know.
Yeah, and if you see Sonic the Hedgehog, don't try and fold him to help him. If he's ready to spin dash, he will do it in his own time. If you do it at an opportune time, you might disturb him, and then the mother won't take him back. Next question comes from Alex. Well, he says, Hello! I don't really have many, but here's the worst thing I do regularly. I call Warhammer 40k, Warty 40k. I shall burn my models and computer immediately. Alex.
That's very good.
It is. And that's all we've got to know. Patrick writes, Dear Plort and Slimebar, once a year or so, once a year or so, sorry, I just pronounced that really weirdly for no reason. My friends and I hold a LAN and usually slip in a few rounds of Action Half-Life 2, universally referred to as Action Half-Life, for fuck's sake, universally referred to as Action Half-Knife 2. In all the years we've never seen another player online, what are your favourite social or multiplayer games to wheel out of retirement in this way? And which game do you wish you had a dialer posse for, which even the close friends have moved on from? Pip's old version of Dota springs to mind. P.S. Feel free to gut this email to add to your list of reader names for games. I was kind of phoning in the question. Patrick. Tommy pointed out the irony of phoning in an email.
Yeah, writing an email to say that you're phoning in the question. It's actually be more effort than writing an email.
He wrote it on his phone.
Yeah, maybe.
You can do that now.
Funnily enough, like, you know, if I could sort of magic together the old team and the old game, it would be Action Quake 2. I never played the Action Half-Life games, but Action Quake 2 is the one that clicked for us, and God, were Knives part of it. I still remember the time when I want to say the map was called Urban 2, and it's like a city street, and there's a skyscraper in it, and there's a sniper hole at the top of the skyscraper, and it's a great place to be as a sniper because it's really dark, and you have a sniper rifle. But it's technically possible to throw a knife that high, and one time I did it, and I killed a sniper in there, and he was furious. And that was the start of my love of throwing knives.
This is a safe space, Tom, and you can confess. I love Quake Deathmatch, and I like Deathmatch Classic, because Deathmatch Classic is Quake Deathmatch. And it's nice to know that someone's always still playing that, pretty much. Like, it'll only be like 10 people, but you can still get a game of that. So it's not really the same as like wanting to get the gang back together, but yeah, I would happily LAN party Quake DM for sure. To be honest, most classic FPSs that I love still have like enough people playing them that if you log on, there will be like somebody somewhere on some weird mod or some weird map. Maybe finding vanilla game is harder now than it used to be.
I'm going to be self-indulgent and say The Hidden.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
A mod that I helped make. And the reason that my group of uni friends made it in the first place was because we enjoyed playing it over LAN so much. And we kind of built on a previous version that another friend had made. And that, I think, was in its natural habitat in a LAN. Online, it didn't work so much, especially with randos. But when it's, a bunch of you in the same room, shouting at each other, working, it was great.
You know, I think I wrote about The Hidden quite early in my PC Gamer career for our download section at the back of the mag. I'm pretty sure I did.
It is pretty old.
It was, but was there a remake by somebody? Am I thinking of something else? Or like inspired by?
You may be thinking of Crysis 3 ripping it off.
Yeah, you were thinking of Evolve. No,
there was like a latter day. It probably wasn't because I played The Hidden at the time, but like probably was like
it got nicked. Well, it got rebuilt in Gary's mod a few times, just because they could borrow all the assets and just reconstruct it.
Right.
And I was in kind of uneven minds about that because, I mean, A, they're nicking all our fucking stuff. But B, they had a massively larger player base, so more people played it. So,
And it was always free, right?
It was always free. It was always classic mod era. So.
But yeah, I just remember writing about it, and I didn't know you at the time. And that's weird because that's how time works and experience and being in a similar space. Yeah.
I do kind of miss Zombie Strike Source, which was literally just a script for Counter-Strike Source that made you and whoever else you played with. It was best with one other person anymore, and it got too easy. You would be counter-terrorists. You had normal Counter-Strike weapons. The terrorist team would be 32 players, and they all only have knives. And there was no like zombie skins or anything, but they just, by the restrictions of that setup, they acted like zombies. Because all they could do is run at you, stab you. And just standing back to back with a friend and just mowing down this horde as they came at you. Obviously, ultimately, Left 4 Dead, went big on trying to live out that fantasy. But I still think I probably had more fun with Zombie Strike Source. It was just more satisfying to, like, shooting the zombies in Left 4 Dead are like tissue paper. They just kind of disintegrate when bullets hit them at all. And it's much more about the special infected who will have unique attacks and stuff. This was much more of a kind of just raw, like a lot of bodies versus very few bodies and brutally mowing them down. It was, it was cool.
I'd probably play AVP2 multiplayer again, if anyone.
With the full life cycle.
Yeah. That's a great idea that never really appeared anywhere else.
That's where you start as a face hugger and you have to like eat cats to turn into...
You have to face hug a player to become a baby xenomorph. Yeah, the single players where you had to like eat cats to get bigger.
Like someone had to draw the short straw and be the human in that though. So.
Random personal trivia. So when I was a teenager, I ran a skinning site, like making skins for stuff, particularly, maps and skins, but I got really into making skins for AVP because it's super easy. And I, probably no one ever downloaded any of the things I'd made, but I once got an email this was back in the day when like a family would have one email address, you know what I mean? Like from their AOL account or something like that. And I got a really long email from like, I'm making the name up, but it was like the Patrickson family. And it was like from all of them about how much they enjoyed my like Pharaoh Predator. And like Jungle Camo Mini Gunner. And, cause it was just me like nicking ideas from Warhammer and like painting them over aliens and predators. But, like, someone liked that. And they, but I just love the idea of like mum and dad and the kids all enjoy a good round of AVP2. I'd play AVP2 with them, I think. Our final question comes from Dave, who writes, Dear CNC, I am diabetic and was recently told that it had begun to affect my eyes. I'm not worried, there is no risk to my eyes, and if I look after myself, there's no reason there should be in the future. However, having my perceived invulnerability challenged has been an uncomfortable experience, especially when in relation to the fragility of sight. It made me consider my chosen hobby. It is so dependent on visuals that the thought of not being able to engage with the majority of games is a scary prospect. And I consider myself lucky there are others whose circumstances are so much worse. My question is this. While there have been some games that have explored the concept of visual impairment, there are not many that I can think of. Do you feel it is a consideration that could be viable in a commercially successful game or series of games? If you were to indulge me in a bonus question, do you think there is scope for a VR game where the main protagonist is in a wheelchair, i.e. a detective adventure or similar? It could be an opportunity to explore the issues surrounding disabled access in a way that would be more immediate and experiential in a context that would encourage people to engage with the issue. It's not my intention to trivialize an incredibly important issue, but if it made players like myself who are unaware of the problems think about the wider implications of poorly designed access or other similar issues, it might result in some positive change, however minor. I really hope I have expressed myself in a way that doesn't seem too ignorant or insensitive. Thanks for the amazing pod, Dave.
Yeah, there was a spate of games about where you play a blind protagonist, and they all had different ways of sort of basically visualizing what information you would have. I can't remember. I know that at least one of them did not do that well from the reviews I read. But I guess that VR would be quite a good way of doing that because you have proper positional hearing. Like you can moving your head affects what direction you'll hear the sound from. So if you're not sure about what direction it's coming from, you can move your head to find out and narrow it down.
Well, it goes without saying, like, if you are blind, then you need it. You can do it with headphones. Obviously, you don't need. And I think I remember ages ago running a story in PC Gamer about, I think, games for blind people that used positional audio exclusively to kind of create puzzles and environments and things. And I will tell you what, this is not something I can do off the top of my head, but I will show notes it because I'm pretty sure I haven't made that up. But that's an interesting thing. And I mean, so part of this question was commercial viability, and that's a tricky thing because, I mean, define commercially viable, but.
Yeah, I mean, like, commercially mainstream? No. That probably won't happen. And then, commercial viability beneath that is just a question of how much you spend. The wheelchair idea is interesting as well. I think that there's a lot of mileage in, game experiences as a way of, giving you always an imperfect and basically sugar-coated insight into a different experience to your own. But it can still be powerful. It definitely has just being put in a situation even in a very disconnected and fake way can open your mind to new things. And you'd have to be just very careful about how you pitch it and make sure you don't pretend that it's the real experience and that you're in any way after this, can imagine what it's really like. Yeah, you'd have to. It would be a weird thing where, like, you would want a seated VR experience, right? For a wheelchair game, if you had room scale, the player could stand up if they wanted to, and so you'd have to actually have like measures in place to prevent that. Like if you go above a certain height, they black out your vision or something. It's weird. A persistent problem with VR is you can't really stop the player doing anything, so you have to figure out what happens if the player does something that isn't possible in the world that you've given them.
Yeah. Interesting problem. And that is all of the questions we have time for this week. If you'd like to send us a question for a future episode, you can do so by emailing us at questions@crateandcrowbar.com or tweeting us at Crate and Crowbar. And something that's coming up a little bit more regularly now than it has done in the past is we're getting a lot of extremely long questions. We had a couple this week that were north of 1,000 words, and in some cases double that. If your question is extremely long and can't be easily truncated, then we're probably not going to be able to read it out. Like, that's not, I mean, rules are there to be broken. We've managed it in the past sometimes. It's really great to receive people's sort of extended thoughts on stuff. But, If your priority is getting a question read out and answered on air, then just as another public service announcement, it's a lot more likely to happen if it's a couple of sentences, simply because of time, my ability to read, which flags at times, and I'm responsible for that. That's not your fault, but nonetheless, it's a thing. And simply the fact that we are getting more questions than we have done in the past, which is nice. One of the reasons we haven't done a question call for the last 2 weeks. And so with time as an issue, it can be harder to devote that time to reading out something that's super long. A couple of paragraphs can work if it's obviously it's all important. But yeah, north of 1,000 words is an article at that point. So yeah, just bear that in mind if you've got any kind of burning inquiries for the floor. But yes, please do send us your questions and thoughts and answers to any arguments that we have. If you'd like to follow us on YouTube, you can do that at crateandcrowbar.com/YouTube. That's where you'll find our ongoing Bloodborne series. You can also hang out with our community. I just knocked my microphone. Hope you didn't hear that. On Discord, you find the link for our Discord channel in the show notes and on the website at crateandcrowbar.com. Crate and Crowbar is very, very kindly supported by our Patreon backers, who allow us to do the pod and the miniatures pod, which is going up next week, and the Bloodborne thing that I just mentioned. And hopefully some new things coming in the future. We are plodding towards some extra specials eventually. You find out more details about that at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. And if you would like to follow us as individuals, I'm on Twitter at CThurston. That's CTHURSTEN. Tom is...
I'm at Pentadact, PNTADACT.
And John
R, JOHN_ARR.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Is it really crateandcrowbar.com/YouTube?
Did I say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't confident enough to actually bring it up at the time.
It's youtube.com/Crate and Crowbar, Tom.
That sounds right.
I hope Pip never listens to this.